Congratulations to Linda McQuaig.
Gearing up for a battle royale, two star candidates recruited by the Liberals and New Democrats in what's sure to be a hotly contested, closely watched by-election. And get this, the by-election hasn't even been called yet. We're back with round two of Sunday Scrum in Ottawa. Susan Riley and Rosemary Barton. So, Susan, how come this riding has attracted such marquee candidates and so much interest even before the by-election's been called?
I'm surprised you have to ask me that. It's at the center of the universe, Nancy, just down the street from where you are.
For the record.
In Toronto. I mean, dense media. I'm not saying dense journalists. I'm saying a dense media congregation right there. Both, you know, the main two candidates, Linda McQuaig and Chrystia Freeland, are both media people. They're well-known and articulate in both cases, although, well, we'll see how articulate, but meant to be very articulate, certainly thoughtful. So. And there's nothing else going on right now.
No, and that's part of it. I find it a little frustrating that it's getting this much attention, given that it hasn't even been called.
She lives in Ottawa.
I was just, during the commercial, I was comparing it maybe to Outremont when Tom Mulcair, when he was going to run. I remember I had to go there and do a story, and the thing hadn't been called yet. But, you know, I do think it's interesting. It's going to be an interesting race because these are two powerful, smart women fighting for progressive voices. And that, to me, is interesting right from the get-go. And it's also interesting because they both happen to be very focused on income inequality and defending the middle class. And like it or not, that is going to be a part of the next election. So we may well get clues into how parties are going to position themselves. And in the case of the NDP and the Liberals, differentiate themselves in some way. And that is always a challenge for these two parties because they're fighting for the same ground and they have some of the same issues. So how do they make it slightly different and attract different people? You know, that's going to be fascinating.
And the NDP candidate, Linda McQuaig, and the Liberal candidate, Chrystia Freeland, have already differentiated themselves, I would argue. Chrystia Freeland has basically said nothing. She's followed the leader's playbook, which is don't give any policy hints, just smile pleasantly for the cameras. Linda McQuaig has already outlined her feelings about taxes. They've got to be higher for upper income earners. And you know, and made a lot of people at the NDP headquarters, particularly Thomas Mulcair, kind of nervous. So while the Liberals are embracing Chrystia Freeland, their candidate, I get the sense that the NDP are tiptoeing a bit nervously away from Linda McQuaig because she's very charismatic, thoughtful. Her presentations are really well defended. And whether she'll toe the party line's another thing.
Okay, so it's interesting just the kind of campaign dynamic for both these candidates. As you say, Rosie, these are two accomplished, articulate individuals, but I think in Canada, Linda McQuaig has perhaps a higher profile, but Chrystia Freeland probably, does she not benefit from the Liberal history in the riding?
Yeah, she does, although, you know, in recent years, it hasn't been as solid as they probably wanted it. I mean, when Bob Rae in 2011, his voter share did go down slightly, and it was Bob Rae, who everybody knew. Chrystia Freeland, yes, internationally, her profile is very high, but, you know, frankly, I didn't know tons about her until, you know, I saw her and have been doing some reading since then. Linda McQuaig has lived in that riding for 12 years. That is to her advantage, and she has a higher profile in Canada. What I think will be interesting is how much machine they get behind them. You know, okay, this thing hasn't been called yet, but Justin Trudeau is apparently going to the riding already. You know, how much will the parties do to try and shore this up? Because it will be, you know, these by-elections, everyone says they're a test, you know, they'll show something. This one actually will be. It'll show whether the NDP can push in a little bit further into Toronto or whether the Liberals can secure the things that they have and maybe even grow it a bit.
So, Susan, for the Conservatives, is the strategy, you put forward a candidate, do the best you can, hope for the best, but ultimately hope that maybe the Liberals and New Democrats in this riding split the vote, that they are so competitive that the Conservative candidate might be able to come up the middle?
I think the Green Party probably has a better chance of coming up the middle in that riding, quite frankly. Although they do have a candidate, Jeff Pollock, who I don't know anything much about, but he seems amiable enough. Our colleague, Susan Delacourt, wrote a fascinating piece in the Toronto Star recently. And since this is all about journalists, let's just keep it in the family, in which she compared the energy at the nomination, in the campaign room for McQuaig versus for the Liberals. And she found the NDP campaign way more energized, the larger turnout. You know, the other she said the Liberal campaign headquarters had a slight air of complacency about it, which is going to be, as she pointed out, dangerous for the Liberals. We'll see.
Yeah.
Just one observation, but worth noting.
Okay, well, I'm sure there will be many opportunities to talk about this by-election because we don't have the date yet.
It's ever called. Yeah.
Bitter. She's so bitter
I know.
about
Let's
it.
get the show on the road, Stephen Harper. Anyway.
Speaking of getting the show on the road, one issue that's been well launched, certainly in talk on Parliament Hill, expenses of MPs and senators, because, of course, it's been front of mind for much of the summer and probably going into well into the fall. This week, of course, Liberals saying all MPs will post expenses online. That got us thinking about the story and whether it resonates beyond the bubble of Parliament Hill. And that is our cue to look at some of the stories over the next few months. We're going to try and characterize certain stories to determine whether they have legs, whether they resonate across the country. And this is the kind of story where we wanted to put that question to you. I mean, there's just been so much talk and will be in the months ahead about transparency and spending. So I put the question to you, Susan. What do you think? Does this and the Liberals' commitment to try and make a show of transparency, does this go beyond the bubble of Parliament Hill? Does it matter to Canadians?
Yes, it does. I don't know how long the bubble's going to last before it's burst, but yes, definitely. I think notwithstanding the weaknesses of what Mr. Trudeau is proposing, the reply of the other of his rivals has been really tone deaf and really weak. They're calling it a stunt. They're saying, well, yeah, we need a committee to study it. I think he's clearly on the winning side of this.
Okay, Rosie, what do you think?
I'm not sure he's on the winning side of it. I'd say he's a step ahead because he's proactively doing something, whereas the other two parties have agreed to, as Susan said, just to look into it. But all they're doing for now, Nancy, is what cabinet ministers do, which is essentially proactive disclosure. Do they have to do that? No. But it won't give you, and it won't give Canadians, the detail that they might want. So it'll say, you know, a sort of a one number for travel, one number for hospitality. I think that what would be good for Canadians and what they might talk about more and how it would resonate more for Canadians would be if they could see exactly how the money was spent. And I mean exactly how the money was spent.
You mean the $16 orange juice?
That's $16 or you know who does that is Elizabeth May. She scans the receipts, she puts them up there, and that might be a way to make Canadians feel like they have, you know, like they're getting the value for their money because it's their money. So yes, it'll get outside the bubble, but if it doesn't go a little bit further, I don't know that Canadians are going to care beyond the headline.
Okay, well, for the record, we always get a bang for the buck with Sunday Scrum. Great to talk to you guys. Same time next week. Thanks a lot.
Bye, Nancy.
Okay, thanks, Nancy.
And remember, you can catch up with the Sunday Scrum online. Just go to cbcnews.ca and find the politics page.